I'm not. I have to say that I'm not seeing anyone's video camera come up.
Yeah, I'm sharing mine, but I'm not sure what I need to do differently.
And I'm sharing mine as far as I know, but it's not appearing. So I'm a bit perplexed by that. But maybe I have to do it blind, but we'll get through this.
I see Dot.
Hello, Dot. Have you seen me?
Solved the mystery.
I can't see anybody else. No, just me. And Slido.
I can't see Dot.
Well, I think Jonathan might say we've broken it again, but at least we can hear each other. That's the main thing. So I've got questions coming up. Alan, are you? Sorry, Alan Richardson, are you there?
I am.
Good man, thank you. Nice to see you. I'm going. I should introduce you. So Alan, I've lost my. Oh God, here we go. Technology at my end is not playing ball as well. I've known Alan how long? I don't know. It must be getting on for 20 years now. And you're a general kind of expert in all things testing. I think you focused a lot on the technology side of it. Obviously, Selenium, you're very well known for that, and Java for testers. I do have your books. I bought them recently, I have to say, very belatedly. And you've obviously got an interesting perspective on things non-testing as well, which I would love to hear you say some of that kind of stuff as well. So very welcome to join us. I've got a question. So here we go. So this should be nice.
Is everybody else coming on with video? Because if not, then I think I'll turn mine off as well.
I can't see you, Dot.
Feel free. Okay, so here's the first question, and I'll start with.
Just you know, Paul, I can see Dot and Alan, Alan Page with the beard, and Paul Gerard. So if you want to stay on cam, and then Alan, if you just toddle your share your camera, you should be able to come on. But yeah, we can see you all.
Mine is trying to share, but seems to be not.
Well, that's the good time to go ahead.
It doesn't seem to be working, Jonathan, the way it ought to, but what can we do? Not much. So, Dart, feel free to cover yourself up. What a better phrase. So the first question I've got is an easy one, I hope. But what are your views on testing being a role versus testing being an activity performed by all? That is building quality into the end-to-end development process. So, Alan Page, would you like to start on that? Do you have a view?
Sure. If you can tell from my previous answer, I believe testing is an activity, and that activity may be performed by someone in a role exclusively, but it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, that makes sense. How about Alan too?
I would agree with that. I would say a role is a person who's been assigned to do an activity.
Sure. Other Alan, are you getting on?
Yes, but the only thing I would say differently is I would say process instead of activity. That's all.
These are very short answers. We're going to fill an hour with this, aren't we? I think my view on it is, I mean, consistent with what you said. I think everybody tests at one time or another, but there are people who do who focus on testing, and they're called testers. But testing isn't owned by testers, I don't think. Is perhaps the way I think about it. Okay, let's move on. Next one from Shakti. How feasible is it to develop a machine learning model which can think intelligently as testers and execute tests? What's your view on that? Dot, if you want to, do you have got a view on that?
I don't think a machine learning model will ever think as intelligently as testers. A machine learning model would be quite capable of executing tests because that's a mechanical process. But this doesn't, the computers do not think. They don't have brains. They can do things. I think as time moves on, machine learning and AI will begin to encroach on things that now don't seem possible to automate, or certainly are difficult to automate, but they will never cover everything. People are still needed. People are the ones with the imagination, with the creativity, who are going to think outside the box and think how things can go wrong that no tool will ever do.
That's true enough. How about you, Alan R., let me say?
Yeah, so it won't work. It won't think. I mean, it won't think as intelligent as testers. We can build ML models to look for problems in the background as we test or in parallel, because they can build up pattern. Like Alan mentioned linters earlier on. We can go build more advanced linters that use ML, but they'll never really replace testers, and they won't really execute tests. They'll just perform an analysis and report things that we have to make judgments on.
Okay, yep, makes sense to me. Alan Page.
Yeah, just lots of agreement and head nodding. I think where ML helps is in, like we see a lot of tools coming out to help with automation to help when your precious selectors move around, and you use a little bit of machine learning to figure out where things belong in the new world. So they can help assist a lot of testing that we do. But yeah, as far as replacing humans, it's just not going to happen.
I'm sure that's true. I mean, the thing is, machine learning algorithms need data, and a key part of the data would be an oracle for behavior, and they don't grow on trees. I mean, that's human information. That's information that's got to come from humans before it comes from anywhere else. So I can't see it either. I think there's a role for AI in machine learning, but I don't think that is it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. There's definitely a huge role for machine learning, but it's about as feasible to use machine learning to directly replace testing as it is to use machine learning to create the application in the first place.
Well, that would be cool, wouldn't it? Then we would be making progress if we could do that. Okay, next question. If we're happy with that. Speed over quality is the driving factor behind project stroke product deliveries. How to combat it? Question mark. If speed is so highly valued, then automation be on top of human. Does that make sense? Alan, do you want to make a stab at that? Have you got a view?
Which Alan?
Oh, sorry, Alan. Which Alan? Oh, Scott's Alan.
Well, so speed over quality and how to combat it is at a management and leadership level, right? You have to decide which one you're going for. Automating can help improve your speed at a certain point once you've got over the hump of actually creating the automation that will give you the speed to go forward. I'm not sure I can say much more than that.
It's a choice, isn't it? I think.
Yep.
Dot, have you got a view on this?
Well, I think if you're valuing automation on top of human, it depends on what are your goals? Speed over quality. If a project literally does have to have something to market, even if it's got lots of bugs in, then speed is more important. But if the quality is more important, then if you get it to market too early, it will fail. And it's just a matter of what's important now for that particular company for this particular product. There's no one rule that says, yes, speed's more important than quality. But if you do want speed, then automation can help with some aspects of some testing. But it still needs, as Alan said, the good point, it still needs the humans to say what should be automated.
And I think you can't not include the value of the information generated by regular human testers or automation. I mean, surely that's the choice. American Alan, do you have a view on that one before we move on?
It's pronounced Murica.
I'm sorry. US.
Yeah, it's a bit of a straw man. I think speed can be more important, so can quality, well, they're both important. And I'm a firm believer in the Eric Ries philosophy that you don't get value from your engineering effort until it's in the hands of customers. So another line of his is, show me a product that shipped with no bugs, and I'll show you a product that shipped too late. We need to get that feedback from customers. So in addition to automation, which can help with that, as I mentioned in my talk, I'm very dependent working in the services side of getting customer usage data to understand if they're being successful using the project, using monitoring. And then it's been now 11 years, I think maybe 12, since Ed Keys said that sufficiently advanced monitoring is indistinguishable from testing. And that's still absolutely true. So that's how we do speed and quality if you're dealing with back-end services. So short answer, you can do both. There's nothing that says that speed is valued over quality.
Yeah, I think so too. Okay, next question. I'll aim this at Dot, if that's all right, just to rotate the first stab. The quality culture model you presented, I guess you, Alan, is US Alan, is I'll start again. The quality culture model you presented is great, indicating what to focus on and what to do. But how about the motivational side on doing it? How to inspire?
I think that should be Merck and Alan.
Okay, let me start. So, yeah, I think leading a team towards a quality culture requires leadership, and leadership is, there's 100 different ways you can do it, and it's getting other people to do what you want them to do because they think they want to do it. So it can be pilot projects, it can be finding allies. That book I mentioned, Leadership on the Line, is all about how to inspire people and get them rallied around the changes you want to make. But generally, my advice there is small changes. I use retrospectives all the time for this stuff. Is find 1 or 2 small things to change, and teams will get motivated by progress. They'll make these 1 or 2 changes. Next time you have a retro, they'll go, those worked great. Let's do 1 or 2 more. But I could do a whole talk on all the different ways on how to inspire, but it takes practice, and it takes some skills, and it takes some courage, and I'll let the other people chime in on if they have other ideas on that.
Okay. Anything to add, Scott, Alan, dare I say?
So I'm trying to think of attributes Alan didn't mention. So belief, right? You have to fundamentally believe in what you are doing and where you're going, and appreciate and support the people who are doing it, and give them the freedom to kind of make mistakes in there.
Yeah, sure. Any views, Dot?
Nothing to add. Great points.
Okay. I think I agree. I'll move on. As an interesting one, next one. With so much focus on automation, do you think testers will even log defects in the future? Is finding defects as an art heading towards extinction? What do we think about that one? I don't know who to throw that one at. Just pipe up if you think you've got a view on this.
So yes, they will continue to log defects in the future. If they don't, then users will. And finding defects as an art will not head towards extinction, because if we ever somehow manage to automate it away, then we will always have security testing on the side doing something similar.
I think sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
There's an assumption in this question that automation will find all the defects.
Yeah. I think that's what I was going to say. I think there's a kind of an assumption that not that it'll find all the defects, but it will be the only thing finding the defects. I mean, is that the way? And therefore humans won't be involved anymore. I think it's the same question as, will tools replace testers? I don't think so. I think finding a defect is a relationship. It represents a relationship between a stakeholder and the product, and people have opinions at the very least, and sometimes there are very direct discrepancies between what people want and what is being delivered. I don't see how we can avoid commenting on that in order to trigger a piece of work to resolve it. So I don't think we're going to lose defects. I don't think we're going to lose incidents or observations or problem reports or whatever you call them. I think we'll always have those things regardless of how they're found.
I think the only way that people will stop logging defects is if there aren't any, and that will never happen. I mean, there might be defects will be logged in a different way, and if you have a very mature organization, as Alan P was describing, then maybe they don't even get logged. They just get communicated and fixed straight away. So they wouldn't be logged in the way that they normally are now. But certainly, finding defects is the skill of testers. If you don't find them, your users will find them, and that's going to be worse for the company.
All right. Okay. Let's move on. Next one is a very general question, I think. How do you think testers should add value with today's world of agile? How do testers add value, in agile teams? Anybody? So
that is such a huge question.
I know.
Because
sorry.
It depends fundamentally on that team and how that team is working and the context and the culture that they're in. Because I think the most important thing that I would stress in there is each individual tester should look at what they uniquely can bring to the project, because that's how they will add most value, because no one else will be doing that thing that they can, that unique perspective that they can bring in.
Yeah,
I think the fact that it says agile is a red herring. Testers should be able to show how they add value, whether you're doing agile or anything else. And the value that testers bring should also be aligned with the goals of the organization, why they have testers there in the first place, what the testers are finding. I think testers often, because in a sense they're perceived as negative, because we are finding things that are wrong with the systems, it can be sometimes hard to blow your own trumpet. But I think it's important that if you find a major bug, for example, that you really make a big song and dance about it and point out what the serious consequences would have been if you didn't find this bug in testing. And people tend to forget that sort of thing. I think they need to be reminded of the value that testers bring.
Yeah, where I take that even farther beyond the tester's view as negative is testers' role is to accelerate the team's ability to deliver customer value. And they're there to help the team deliver. We talked about speed and quality. I think a tester on an agile team especially is doing both. Because if you're doing both, if you're improving quality from the beginning and helping people understand how to build quality in, delivery is going to speed up as well.
I think my 2p worth would be to step back and say, well, what do testers actually give their teams that anyone thinks has any value? It's information. I mean, you're providing information when you're testing software or systems. You're providing information on what the product is capable of and what it cannot do or does not do correctly. And if people don't value that knowledge, then you're going to have a hard time justifying your existence. But of course, everyone understands that you do need that knowledge. And the focus of attention with testers is not always on bugs. I mean, sometimes you just got to demonstrate stuff actually works, because that's how the thing is going to become or be deemed acceptable. And I think that the challenge I have is if you're not adding value, well, the measure of value is the confidence that stakeholders have in their decision making. If they're making decisions without information and are not confident, either you're not delivering information or you're not being asked to deliver information. But that's the sales pitch. People are flying blind without information from testers. So I use the metaphor of like a navigator. You know, the pilot flies the plane, that's the developer. The tester doesn't fly the plane, can't fly the plane, but provides all the information necessary to follow a flight plan or at least reach the destination. So it's an essential. And whether the tester provides that information or the developer does it for themselves, I mean, I almost don't care. Someone has to do that, and that has great value. There's no question.
I think that I heard a couple of presentations at online conferences recently from two different people. I can't think of either of their names at the moment, but I'll try and find that and pass it on a bit later on in this conference. And they were saying the testers are the people who make the developers better. It helps them make their work better. And there was one lady who started out as a developer and was working with a tester and found, actually, if I listen to this tester, it makes my development go a lot smoother, and then became a tester. And that was the way she sold herself. I will make you a better tester. I will make you look better.
Well, I think that's the key thing. That my job as a tester is to make developers look good. We're all heading in the same direction, trying to deliver a high quality product. We all want that end game to be a very positive outcome. That is something that's really wonderful, So your ultimate goal, your initial goal, your preliminary goal, your day-to-day goal is to find bugs, but your ultimate goal is to show the damn thing working and to make everyone look good and then go to the pub. That's how it works. Okay. Any more on that one to say, or I'll move on. Okay, next one. From Maros, how to say to team leader that long time, in quotes, domain testers are very valuable. Oh, it's just disappeared. Where did that go?
It's still on top.
Yeah, sorry. Although they don't have coding skills, but great exploratory and domain knowledge. How to say that team leader long time? So I guess like user testers or people who've got very good business knowledge, domain knowledge, are very valuable. Although they don't have coding skills, but they can still be great exploratory testers. Am I?
I mean, I think this is really what we've just been talking about, is how do you show the value of testing as opposed to automation. I think, that people think that automation is everything that testing should do, but it's showing how valuable you are. And I think the domain knowledge is very important, because then you know the product inside out and you can investigate it in a way that other people wouldn't think of. And
you probably have knowledge of test cases, dare I say, or data examples, which which they know are exceptional and will really stress the system. Things that your regular tester might take a long time to figure out or detect.
Well, I'd like to jump in here because there's some perhaps hidden undertext here, which is worth mentioning, is that when we talk about testers coding or scripting or whatever, it's often, in fact, almost always for the purpose of they should be writing automation, which, as you heard me say earlier, I think the developer should probably should own the vast majority of test automation. But if that great exploratory tester, I wouldn't, if their option is to write automation through coding, I wouldn't do it either. But often these folks don't think they want to code because they don't want to do that stuff. But if they can learn, in my experience, and working with like technical artists who are domain experts but don't code, often, in fact, in every case I can think of, they've learned enough coding where they could just write a little bash script or a batch file or whatever platform you want to help generate data for their testing, or to create variants of the data they have for more testing. Those things are really helpful, and I think it doesn't answer the question at all, because I'm telling them a little bit of coding is going to help you be an even better domain expert. But I think we should avoid trying to turn domain experts into, in fact, I'm not going to say avoid. I'm going to say we should stop trying to turn domain experts into people who write test automation.
Hear, hear.
Also, what you're pointing out, Alan, is that those domain experts can help other people in different ways, so they can contribute into the project, not just in terms of exploratory testing, not just in terms of automating, but looking at the acceptance criteria in more detail to see if the examples cover the right things. That's what you said in terms of the data. So there's way more that they can do that isn't just covered in this question.
Right, and then if they're able to partner, when they partner with their development team and talk about the kinds of things they're going to test from the domain expert point of view, that development team may have ideas on their own on test automation or data generation, et cetera, that come from that conversation.
Yep.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think my pitch on it would be, I suggest to people that you need, at the system level, where you're actually testing the system that might be, it's close to what the users would end up with. That is, it's in an environment where it's reasonably realistic, but not necessarily perfect. You need testing skills, sure. You need technical skills, potentially, and you need business domain skills to understand what people are trying to do with the software. And depending on your perspective, you probably have a different measure of each. And obviously, users start from a position of mostly domain knowledge and their familiarity with how things work there. But it varies. And so there's a lot of exchange of knowledge and information between the three kind of skills emphases, let's say. So I can just ask my own question then. I mean, does learning how to code make a tester who can't learn how to code, who can't code at the moment, does learning how to code make better testers? What's your view on that?
I would say no, because learning to code is a different skill than testing. So if you're a good tester, learning to code would enable you to be more efficient at generating data and so on, but it doesn't change whether you're a good tester or not. In fact, it might take your attention off doing good testing because you're doing the coding.
Okay. We've had this conversation a long time ago, but I think it keeps coming back, and I keep seeing it in places here and there. So that's why I ask.
It depends on the person. Right. For some people, because it gives them a different perspective, they might understand things that they don't have to test anymore because they know how it's implemented and they understand there's a different risk profile. But then they know that they can target it more effectively from a different direction. And it really depends on the person and how they embrace that set of knowledge.
Good point.
Yeah, I think I was going to disagree vehemently with Dot, but I get the point now. Now that I think about it, I have seen people that have learned coding, and then they want to solve every single problem by writing a Selenium script for it, and it's cringy. So, but in general, I think it does help because it gives you, oh, hey, here's this thing that was really hard before, and now it's easy. Or as Alan R mentioned, because I wouldn't refer to myself in the third person, you can identify areas where, oh, because I know how this works now, a little bit more context here, I can change my focus because that would just be over. I'm actually testing the same thing if I test one and different inputs. So in general, I would say it's an advantage, but there are exceptions where it can make someone ineffective. But
Yeah.
I could also argue that person who, in fact, in the case I can think of, the person who learned some coding and began to write a bunch of crappy automation only wasn't a very good tester in the first place. So I think in most cases it's beneficial, but you do have to keep an eye on it.
Yeah, I take the point that if a tester learns coding, they do gain an understanding and an more in-depth understanding of how the software works, and that can be useful. But what I object to is saying everybody must learn to code, otherwise they're not worth having.
Well, that wasn't the question, but yes, no. I agree with that.
I think my take on this would be that's the old what's the name, Homer Simpson kind of cartoon where he says something like, every time I learn something new, something else gets squeezed out of his brain. Does that make sense? He's got limited capacity and literally something falls out of his ear. So I don't think that applies. I think learning a new skill, whatever that skill is, can only ever be additive. It can't subtract from your knowledge. You might learn something that influences your behavior, I suppose, and you might say, oh yeah, I'm going to start writing test automation. I wouldn't ever pitch it in those terms. I think if you're a non-technical tester, let's say, and you learn a little bit about programming, maybe even in the language that your developers are using, you can have more intelligent conversations with them about what's hard to get right. And you can learn a little bit more about what's under and I'm sure, I think Scott Allen said this, it's like you can just have a better insight as to what's going on inside the system. So you become a slightly more informed tester. So I wouldn't tie learning how to program a little bit with automation in any way, really. I mean, that's just an accidental thing in my view. So, okay, have we done that one to death? Should we move on? Next one, I'll take one off the top. Hi, this is anonymous again. What is your advice to new QA employees on how to both hit the ground running and succeed over time? How to best help the team? So I guess, what's your advice to new testers in terms of being productive and helpful, and existing testers to help their teams? What do you think?
I could give my snarky answer. They should learn to code. But
I think that certainly for a newbie, the people I've met, and over the 30, Dot's probably met countless, and all of us have met countless testers at conferences, and the first question is like, well, how long have you been in testing? And they say, a week. And then what do you say next? And the thing is, I find that they don't know what their goal is and what their role in life is almost. And they might go on a certification class or something like that. But I'm not sure they know why they're doing the job they're doing, other than something very metronomic almost. They don't get it. And so my advice to them is to understand what their role is. And it's there, and I think this quite strongly, that they're there to provide, they're an information provision service. And if people don't want information from the testers, well, then you're out of the job. But most developers want information on what their code does and what it doesn't do. And certainly stakeholders who have to make decisions need information to make those decisions. Only the tester can provide it. Everything else is just hot air. Only the tester has hard evidence of what the software can do. So I would say seek out your stakeholders, figure out what they want and what information they need, and then you've got a brief that no one can question because you're working for the powers that be, wherever they are in your project. So that would be my advice. And don't ever don't ever change. You've always got to satisfy your customer.
So also what you're talking about is learning. So you have to learn your craft and your skills and practice. And if you're going to succeed over time, I think it's really important not to build in too fixed opinions, because the next environment that you go into could well be thinking in a very different way. So you have to generalize to what is the point of this, and then learn how to apply that in whatever situation arises.
Sure, yeah. I mean, just leading on.
In terms of how best to help the team, I would say go and ask the team how you could most be of help to them.
I think testers, the way I look at it now is whether if you are the tester in a team, I think my pitch on that is that you are automatically the lead tester, the test lead, and because you've got to do a bit of testing for sure, but also you've got to talk to users about how they might contribute to the test activity in projects, but also developers. Developers might need advice or support or reassurance they're doing the right thing in their testing. But then also you might learn stuff from the developers to say, look, these are things that I'm nervous about as a developer. I think you should pay attention to these, and off you go. So yeah, pay attention to what people say. All people in the project have a need for information from testing at some time or another.
I would couple things. One is, and to echo what Alan R. said, learning is so important. That your best advice is just always be learning. If you're not learning something new constantly, no matter what your career is in knowledge work, you're gonna get it's gonna slow down. But the other thing I want to challenge you on is, I know there's. Boy, I'll go ahead and get on the soapbox briefly, but I think it's career limiting to view yourself as a tester as just an information provider. I mean, that's part of what you do, but again, you're there to accelerate the team's ability to deliver customer value. Providing information and relegating decisions to stakeholders, I think limits your career growth, because you need to grow to have a seat at the table, and your opinion needs to be valued. And that's going to take time if you're new to get there. But if you view the ceiling as like your ultimate role as an information provider for other people to make decisions about how to ship products, I think that's going to limit your career and growth. So I know that's said a lot across all the testing communities, and I'm probably going to make some enemies with this, but I'll keep it clean here, but I'm just going to say I don't like that view at all.
Okay, so I'm not suggesting that's all a tester does, but if you're a newbie, you're probably hired to find bugs, go through scripts.
And I don't like the role of test as a bug finder either.
Well, indeed, and that's what I would, yeah.
So some of those things, I think, and my opinion is those things they can put an artificial limit on career growth of testers. So if you view yourself as a bug finder who provides information, I think that's going to be limiting to your career. You have to see that you are an important part of this team delivering the right balance of speed and quality in order to help customers solve their problems.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
I wouldn't limit it by saying, oh, my role is only to provide information, or my role is to provide bugs. It's to do whatever is necessary, using your point of view and the skills that you have and your network of people you're going to meet on the team to make that happen.
Yeah. So just to sort of defend what I'm trying to say but I would say the information that you provide isn't limited to running tests, let's say, because I would say you have a role in the requirements piece where people around the table might be agreeing that a requirement is sufficient to go and build something, and the tester might be the one person who says, well, hold on, there's a big gap because I've thought of a test that I can't possibly predict an outcome for, or there's inconsistency or ambiguity in what people are saying. So I think the value of testers and what they do is probably greatest in kind of the requirements piece and in the looking out for potholes in the road side of things. So I wouldn't limit it to just running tests. I mean, that's for sure. So I'm with you. I understand.
I think you're digging an even bigger hole for yourself, Paul. Pushing them now into the requirements side, and I think the hope you can do whatever it takes to make a difference. And I think I don't see Alan P saying anything controversial. I think you're basically agreeing with him. You're just putting yourself in a slightly more awkward position. So do whatever it takes. The hard part about this question is if you're new in testing, you won't know where to start. And now we're giving you all these ideas and you think you have to know everything at once. And the point is you don't. As Alan said, you just keep learning, build up the skills, learn the leadership skills that you're going to need, like Paul's talking about, build up your influence and add a difference.
Yeah. Okay, should we move on? Next one. So at the top of the list, we've got most companies options for shifting the tests. Most companies are opting for shifting the tests to the left, making dev to pick testing, reducing the scope of tester. Is this the trend that's slowing takeout testers out? I'm really not sure what that means.
I think what the question is asking in their particular company, it sounds as though people want to shift testing to the left, but in doing that, they're saying the developers are choosing what to test. But that's not right. If moving testing to the left means the developers choose what to test, that reduces the scope of the tester, it should be the testers who are moving to the left, and they are the ones who are helping with the developers to decide what to test. But if in your company they're saying, oh well, we'll only have the testers at the end and we'll let the developers decide what to test, then that would be a trend that would take the testers out of the equation. But that's not right. The testers should be involved on the left if you're shifting left to choose what to test.
It reminds me, I just did the math in my head because I've been doing this for far too long, but over 20 years ago on a team at Microsoft, I helped the development team learn to write unit tests because they weren't writing any, because that's the way we did things that time. And I had serious questions from developers saying, well, if we're writing all these unit tests, what is the test team going to do? And there's plenty more to do. And when I talk about, I think developers should write nearly all of the automation, that doesn't eliminate the job for testers. There's plenty more work to do there. Instead of automating functional correctness, those testers can focus on writing perf or load or security or scenario tests. There's no end of work for a tester to do as work shifts left. So yeah, that's my point.
And this question also points to what Alan P said in the last answer, which is this can push you out unless you push back and figure out those new areas that you can influence and add value into.
I think what I'd take from this notion of shifting left is shifting left isn't just about who runs which tests and when and makes choices of which tests. Shifting left might mean you go and do a bit more coaching of the developers in their testing rather than trying to pick the bones out of what they don't do. The other angle is shifting left to me means going further upstream still and talking in the same group of people who are figuring out the requirements and having a tester's view, a tester's perspective of a requirement that may be not good enough to build and certainly not good enough to test. So to me, it's like a whole everything. Shift left is starting thinking about testing, not just helping developers or letting developers do more or more automation. I think it's a bigger game, a bigger play than that. So, but anyway, yeah, I don't think there's a negative to shifting left so much as if the people to the left think that there's no need for, let's say, system level testers, there's almost certainly a bigger issue at stake here. It may be a power grab or something. Okay, let's move on.
Paul, can I just have well, this would be a red card if we're using cards. The Slido questions seem to change around at random. There was one that looked interesting coming up soon that seemed to have 10 likes on it about no-code automation tools, but then that's disappeared, and we have ones with like 0, 4, and 3. I don't understand how the questions are being put to the top.
Yeah, I'm not in control of those, I'm afraid. Yes, that's exactly.
Well, I want to answer that no-code one.
Okay, well, anybody find the question?
I'll ask it because I can't see it. So, If you remember enough of the question, Doc, why don't you ask it?
I'll see if I can find it.
I'm,
Oh, here it is. What is your take on no-code automation tools? If you
loads of
don't have
likes.
code to automate, do you still think devs should own it? Automation. Oh, it's come up the top now.
Yeah.
Can I start?
I think a no-code automation tool is an oxymoron, because the automation tools, of course, are full of code. What the automation tool vendors have called no code or codeless automation is just simply an interface into the tool which doesn't require code skills to put tests in. And this is a good thing, because a level of abstraction that allows non-technical testers to write code into the automation is useful. But you still, in this approach to testing, if you have the tools, this type of tool, is fine as long as nothing goes wrong. But as soon as something goes wrong, if a test doesn't work, for example, and the testers can't figure out why, and there's a technical problem that's causing a test to fail, then you have to have someone who can look under the bonnet or under the hood and see what's going on, and has to have an understanding of the code in order to put it right. So you still need support. And it's not that there's no code, it's just simply that there's an interface which enables you to write tests more easily.
I'd agree with that, I think, Doc, of course. I mean, I'm just thinking of an example. So something like Robot Framework, which is keyword driven, and
Yes.
in principle, no code there, but it interfaces with Selenium under the bonnet kind of thing. When you lose synchronization with the software under test, you quite often have to go and figure out another way of matching your test script, dare I call it, with the system under test and the tool that's actually doing the execution engine under the bonnet. So, but the thinking behind the test doesn't change. All that's happening is you're expressing it in a different level of abstraction. So, the way the tester has to construct the test in their mind isn't changing. All that's changing is that you're not implementing that abstraction in Java or Python or whatever. You're using keywords or some other more model-oriented level of abstraction, I think. Yeah.
I have a strong opinion on this question, and yeah, it's a little different than others. So this combines into the ML question a little bit earlier, and I mentioned that I won't do any advertising, but there's a growing number of no-code automation, web automation and app automation toolkits that use ML to help make the tests more reliable. My take is, in using some of these tools, that they're good enough now that if the test is flaky, if it stops working and the tool can't figure it out, which is rare but possible, just record a new test. You can record, and these tests are in most cases as reliable or more reliable than a lot of the handcrafted Selenium people are writing, but can be created in a fraction of the time. And doesn't have to be the non-technical person. I have developers using these tools because it's an easier way to get some quick web functionality verification done. They can do it faster. And if the test gets so screwed up from other changes, they can easily just throw it away and create another recording that's good for the next several months to a year. So my take is that these no-code automation tools, it may take a while to get there for people to get over this hump, but I think they replace a huge amount of the handcrafted, and they're still going to need some for that's a whole other soapbox. I think they replace a bunch of the handcrafted Selenium and stuff going on today, because they're, for the effort versus value, it's low, as I mentioned in my talk, it's low effort, high impact work you can get from these things. And I see a lot more web automation moving there.
So that's an interesting answer, in that, because I've previously been very biased against no code automation tools and started
And I
to see
have been
value in
too.
them. Yep, but I would never have thought about putting it in the hands of developers. But if you've seen that working, then that's a really good mind head shift as well, because I would never have considered that.
Yeah, and believe me, I was extremely biased against no-code solutions for record and playback forever and ever, but the tools are just so damn good now that I've changed my mind.
Interesting.
Cool. Any more on that? I think we've got a good talking point coming up now. It's this. It was addressed to Dot, but I've no doubt we've all got opinions on this. What are good certifications for testers, manual and automatic? What do we make of that? Do you want to start, Dot? You and I go way back on this one, don't we?
Yeah, that's right. Well, when you and I started working on the qualifications for testers back in the, whatever it was, 19 something or other. The reason we wanted to have a qualification for testers was that everyone thought testing was easy. There was nothing to it. There was nothing to learn. Anyone could do it. And it was very much not regarded as having as a respectable profession. And having something where you had to have some basic knowledge about what testing is and what its limitations were was a way of removing a bottom layer of ignorance. So I think this is where the ISTQB qualifications started. And I think the ISTQB qualifications have been helpful to a lot of people. They've certainly been very popular, but they have also been, well, misused is the wrong thing, but some people have made claims that they were more than they were. They claimed that they would make people skilled testers, which they don't. You only know some information. And there was a great backlash against that. And somebody even said these qualifications are evil, which I don't think is right. So they do have their place. I still think for testers, certainly the foundation level is a reasonable place to start. But I don't know of any qualifications for automated testers other than for the tools themselves. I'm not that up to date with what's around at the moment.
Okay, Alan, what do you think?
So we're both going to talk at the same time now.
You go for it.
So I'm not entirely sure there are any good certifications. I think there's probably good training, but I don't think any of the certification processes actually certify you in any sense that is meaningful. So my answer is I actually don't know what the good certifications are because all the certifications I've seen don't look very good, but I haven't done any, so I can't really talk from experience.
I think my pitch would be in 1996 or 1997, when we first thought about this being a good idea, as Dot said, I mean, the world was a different place then, and there was kind of not much out there that you could pin value on in terms of a recognizable skill set, if you like. So part of what the benefit of the initial certification was to identify what things testers needed to know about. And that was a useful exercise. Now, I think my disappointment from where it was 24 years ago, or maybe even 25 now, is that we haven't progressed enough. In that, if you look at today's foundation level material from trainers who are adhering to, for example, ISTQB, you'd see some slight changes in terminology, but the thrust of it is pretty well the same. And so my disappointment is that we haven't moved on. You know, we haven't really taken what was done 25 years ago and progressed it in the way I would have expected. So I think there is room for certification in technical subjects. So you know, a test automation tool, a certification in that, so that if you're hiring someone, they've done the classes, they've got some experience, they've done a kind of an exam or filled out a workbook going through examples. I mean, I think there's value in that, but I think the thought processes that testers go through, we're not covering these things in our certifications, and that's a disappointment to me. So are there good certifications? I'm not sure certification is really the ultimate way to go. It's part of a more broader learning and development process, and I think registration is really the way to go rather than certification. That's another kind of worms. But US, Alan, Mr. Page, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm mostly in line with Alan R. I think, well, I'll be blunt. I think training and taking courses on things to learn more about them is good. I know, the certifications for what you get from them, and I don't have any, but I've looked at what's there and I've gone through the material for a lot of these, and man, they charge a whole lot of money for you to take a test, and that I don't see the value in that. I think, again, if an employer is looking for that, it can be important, but other than that, again, I look at the effort versus impact, and in this case, the cost versus value. And they look and smell like they're trying to make money more than they're trying to help testers. For a lot of them, I see.
I think that was what went wrong with them, to be honest, because
Okay.
when we set out to do it, we would happily have given it away for free for everybody, but it seemed to developed a life of its own, and
That's unfortunate.
it's a shame it's perceived that way, because that wasn't the initial intention.
I believe you.
Okay, so I think what went wrong was perhaps the identification of the stakeholders and their vested and genuine interests in how it should all work was just got a bit wrong. It became a checklist for recruiters to filter candidates, and it's like, that's not good enough. We've got to do better than that. Anyway, so let's move on. Next one is, what is the role of test managers and heads of QA in an agile environment? I'm guessing, with a test manager with his team or her team distributed across many projects, what's their job at all of a sudden? What do they do? What do you make of this one? Anyone?
I think they become a community leader. So I'm usually in an agile company, if you have a bunch of agile testers embedded into development teams, but they need someone to bring them together to make sure they're learning from each other, from others' experiences, maybe even doing their separate retro away from their teams, making sure they have the right training in place, making sure they have all the support they need to grow and get better at helping teams deliver. But in short, and I think this is even mentioned in the Agile testing book, I think they become a community leader for quality and testing at their company.
Yeah, that's quite a good perspective. And also what they also do is they maintain that perspective of, we have to continue to be testing and pushing this, because sometimes when you're in the project, because the test managers and heads of QAs are not in the project, sometimes when you're in the project, you lose focus of that overarching goal.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Doc?
Don't really have anything to say on this one.
I think my pitch would be agree with what's been said by the Allens, but I think one of the skills that would be really valuable in that kind of role, whether you're leading a community or you have an assurance role, in that you keep an eye on things, running in projects and making sure things are getting done that should get done, is you've got a role as a coach or a mentor as well, I think, to consider. And I've seen that in a couple of companies I spoke to, probably more than a year ago now, but where there was a built-in kind of community of testers across projects, where the role of, they weren't called test manager or head of QA or anything like that. Their role was as a coach, literally, and they just kind of managed by wandering around, in the old phrase, and by giving people a little bit of a nudge here and there and advice as well. So it's tricky, because when I set up the Test Management Forum 16 years ago, within a few years, I had lots of people saying, I've been agile, what do I do now? All these test managers. And like, one choice was to go back to testing and being a stronger tester, or to specialize in automation or more technical testing, or get out of testing completely. And I saw all routes taken, I have to say. But anyway, that was kind of a more abrupt response rather than the how you manage your career. Should we move on? Next one, and we're running out of time. We've got a couple of minutes left, so I need to say this. Iftekhar, I really apologise if I've got that wrong. What's your general view on the practicality of the test pyramid? Can it be applicable in this DevOps/test ops culture? What does the team think? Any views?
So I don't think the test pyramid is practical, but what it tells you is there are different levels at which you can test, and that concept is practical everywhere.
What I've discovered recently with the test pyramid, or at least my insight has been, and test pyramid says you should have very few end-to-end tests, and you've seen it before. But my big insight on that, and sorry if I cut you off, Alan R, is that rather than that being a target of what kind of tests you want to write for your application or what you think is best, I think the pyramid sort of distribution is a result of a well-defined, of a well-architected application where you don't have logic in the upper levels of the application, so you can test them at lower levels.
So that's true. In order for that pyramid to represent how you approach it, it does imply a well-architected application.
Yeah.
I think my take on it would be I think Jonathan's going to take control. Oh, okay. He's in the wings, ready to go. My last thing I would say would be, if I tend to put it on screen now in presentations, and I overlay it with the V model. It says nothing that the V model doesn't say. So it's a throwback to staged processes and poorly defined test strategies. A good test strategy should help you to recognize where the risks are, where your focus of attention should be, and where you use tools, manual testing, whatever the hell you need to use. Doc, have you got anything to say on this?
I think the emphasis on having the more thorough testing at unit test level is, I mean, that's where you're going to get the coverage of the code, for example, and being more selective at the higher levels is probably helpful to a lot of people. But also it usually includes this cloud hovering over the top of it, which is you still need to have human testers and interactive testing and exploratory testing. And as I said in my talk, if you have human users for your system, you'd better have some human testers.
Okay, and with that, I think I'll close this section of the program and thank Dorothy, Graham, Alan Page from the US, and Alan Richardson in the UK. Thank you so much for your contribution. It's been great. Over to you, Jonathan.
Thanks, everyone.